Hello folks, I was not going to do a video today, but then I've been shopping around online, just looking at a few things. Maybe I was going to play some Skyrim, maybe I was going to just sit here and do nothing until I head out for a wee drink later. But then I came across this video by a YouTuber, the link is in the description below, by a YouTuber called BuildOut00, who has re-uploaded a interview between Brendan Lee Morgan and Erika Ishii on the subject of gatekeeping. Now, we talk about this quite a lot on the channel in terms of gatekeeping and role-playing and in Warhammer, and whilst they don't talk about Warhammer in this, they do talk about D&D and role-playing and stuff, and I think it's saying the same things that I'm getting from a lot of people outside of the hobby looking into Warhammer and telling us how to act and how to feel and how to do things, right? I always say, and I've always said I wanted to practice what I preach, you cannot learn what you are unless you engage with the other side. And I would consider Brendan Lee Mulligan and Erika Ishii the other side. I would define myself as a lefty centrist, right? So I'm slightly to the left, but I'm very much in the middle, you know, and I definitely do identify a lot with the conservative side of the political spectrum in certain ways. And I'm open-minded enough to say that, right? I'm not all one thing or another. I think it's very dangerous to be one thing or another, and I think I've said that on the channel so many times. So, I'm somebody who values gatekeeping quite highly. I think there are two different sides to the gatekeeping. There is a positive and a negative side to it. The positive side to it is holding people to a certain standard and making sure that the hobby that we built together is protected and we're getting the right people in. It has nothing to do with colour, race, preferences, whatever. Nothing to do with that. It's all about what you're bringing to the hobby. Horus Heresy right now is a big example of that. The models are becoming cheaper with the 20 model units of Space Marines, things like that. A lot of people are going to be getting into that hobby, and quite frankly, a lot of people in Horus Heresy saw a lot of behaviours and things in Warhammer 40,000 that they wanted to get away from. And that's why you're seeing quite a lot of gatekeeping, quote-unquote, from them. There will be sound in a video, by the way. I just had to turn up the sound because the video was quite low, so I didn't want to blast your eardrums out with some music and have to like mess around with that kind of stuff. But yeah, there is positive gatekeeping like that, and that to me is a positive because they're keeping the thing that brought people to the dance, they're keeping it pure for everybody else to look at and enjoy, right? And if you want to get into what those people are into, then Horus Heresy's there, right? If you watch Outer Circle's videos and it really you know wets your jammies and you really want to get involved in that sort of stuff, then him and everybody else who plays Horus Heresy will welcome you with open arms. If you've ever read a Horus Heresy book and you love it, those people are ready for you. They're saying, look, come in and talk to us about your armies that you want to do. This, that, and the other. Brilliant, right? Now, the negative side of gatekeeping is the stuff that Erika and Brendan are going to talk about in a minute, which is stuff like, you know, they don't look like us, they don't do this, they don't do that, they are from different backgrounds and from different religious backgrounds. Now, whilst that is a negative, and it shouldn't happen, I like to think, and I think I kind of know, looking at the hobby and being involved in it on the ground floor on a daily basis as kind of like a quarter of my working life right now, that is so rare. That kind of gatekeeping is so rare that it's kind of like being attacked by a shark, right? Now, what I'm saying there is, there are certain people who are more susceptible to that kind of gatekeeping than others. Women are on that high rung level, right? If you come into a hobby store or wherever, you might be gatekeeped as a woman, no matter what colour you are, right? No matter what colour you are. What I'm getting at is there are very few people in the Warhammer fandom who will turn around to somebody who is black and say, I don't want them here. Right? Do you know what I mean? There are certain parts of that gatekeeping spectrum that are far more out there than others. So what these two are going to talk about doesn't necessarily touch on all the things that I am shown from female gamers on a daily basis who play Warhammer. Like, some of the shit that they get sent to them is beyond the pale. But anyway, let's get into... I'll stop rambling. Let's get into the actual video, and I will stop it every now and again just to give you some thoughts on what I mean. But anyway, this is Brendan Lee Mulligan and Erika Ishii. The credit is down in the description below, so thank you very much for BuildOwl for putting this over in March of this year. Let's have a little look at the interview.
From Browncoat B. Thanks, Browncoat B. How do you handle toxic gaming culture? One of the reasons I've decided to start DMing is I live in a smallish town in the South. Our culture is still years behind, and this D&D revival hasn't really hit us.
It's one thing I wanted to talk about straight away. Our culture is really behind. I'll come back to that in a minute. I just wanted you to really focus in on that. By the way, if you want to know what I'm like in teaching, this is pretty much what I'm like. But anyway.
Our game shops have a really toxic culture and tend to push away anyone who isn't a straight white guy. For reference, I am a woman, so I already have some trouble to get them to take me seriously. Bummer, and I'm sorry that's happening.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. I just feel very fortunate in that growing up, my D&D groups were always split, if not more female heavy, just because I sort of created my own. Yeah. And that's what you have to do at the end is you start your own. You said you're becoming a DM, and that's wonderful. That's kind of the way to do it. I wasn't a DM, and so I kind of had to rely on my friends and be like, hey, I'd like to bring in my friends to this group. Is that cool? But since you're a DM, you can invite whoever you want, which is great. And then also online. Online is a good way to do it, either through meetup groups, sort of websites are can be hit and miss and stuff, but you could consider at least starting out using Roll20 or Skype to do online groups.
Okay, so a few things here. First of all, I actually think the attitude of... How do I put this? The people that she's describing in this letter, like the person who asked this question, I'm going to get to what Erica said in a minute, but what she's saying is there are two... She frames it in a completely wrong way. What I'm saying is, she comes in and says, instead of saying, hey, I would like this to be, I would like to find more people like me to play the game with, and I'd like to find a way to ingratiate myself to groups that don't look like me, how do I integrate myself so that they're more comfortable with having me around, right? Now, that's the way to approach it. This isn't your hobby. This hobby, and I'm sorry, it just is, it was built by straight white guys like me, right? So 90% of the people in the hobby are going to be people who look like me and not like you. So the best thing for you to do to ingratiate yourself into the hobby is just join a table. Join a table, join a group. Do not do what Erica is saying here, all right? It's all coming from a very good place. I understand that. But shuttering yourself off in your own little cliques is only going to make you the other. It's only going to sequester you off into your own little palisade over there where nobody's going to want to come and speak to you. You're going to be playing on your own with these very specific people and it doesn't foster understanding. The entire reason why I'm watching this video is to foster that understanding, to make sure that I'm having an engagement with people who don't think the same way that I do, because you never know, they may have ideas that are quite good. I mean, for fuck's sake, Gary Gygax and people like that are straight white males, and they built this hobby that you're wanting to enjoy. So maybe they've got some ideas that you might find interesting. Just saying, right? Putting yourself off into a corner and sitting there in your own little clique is exactly the behaviour that you hated in high school. And they will get into that in a minute, by the way. But that is exactly the behaviour that you hated in high school. The way to engender yourself to a new hobby, a new place, is to throw yourself into it feet first. It doesn't matter if the people in that hobby are black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, gay, straight, lesbian, whatever, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Muslim, whatever, I don't care. It doesn't matter who they are. Do not see that, or at least try not to see that. Go into that hobby, right, with an open mind, open eyes, and value the hobby for what it is. If you're going into Horus Heresy, value the hobby value that game for what it is. If you're coming into Warhammer 40,000, value Warhammer 40k for what it is and what it always has been, right? Don't force the companies or try and pressure the companies into changing the game to suit your own whims, because that will only make people hate you. Because there are a lot of people who like what is here already, and they don't want it to change, and they will gatekeep the shit out of you for doing that, and that doesn't make them racist, sexist, or whatever. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It makes them fans of the thing that you're trying to change. Okay? So, whilst I agree with the sentiment, I really do, I agree with the sentiment of going out and making your own. I've given that advice on the channel on more than one occasion, where I say, look, go out and make your own thing. Like, if If you can't quite find people, go make your own. I completely get that. It's a starter build-up. Yeah, you do it yourself. Brilliant. I like the idea. The one other thing I wanted to touch on was this person's attitude coming into the hobby is all wrong. How she framed her message, how she framed her thing. Did you notice that straight white male thing that she said? Basically, she's saying, there are too many straight white males in this hobby. How do I go make it more inclusive to myself? I'm sorry that there are too many straight... Shall we just not be here? Like, shall we just all leave and have you just come in on your own? Like, what is that? It doesn't matter what they are. Go in and sit down. Go in and sit down. I don't know anybody in the role-playing sphere, right? And I know some pretty right-wing people who are in the role-playing sphere, and not one of them would look at anybody sideways when they join a role-playing table. You can look like Mike Pondsmith. Don't know who he is. He's pretty awesome. Go and look him up. Or you can look like Gary Gygax. They wouldn't give a monkeys because you're there to do role-playing with them and they don't care. They will just sit there. Now, if you start bringing in transgender pixies into their game, which is like a really low fantasy dark setting, and you want to, preach about things that are real-life politics, then yeah, people will be standoffish and probably tell you to leave. Because that's not the game that they're playing. If it is the game that they're playing, all power to you, right? The hobby needs to be respected, not your wishes and whims. Okay? And I do think coming into a hobby with the attitude of there's too many straight white men into a hobby that was built by straight white men is probably not the best attitude to have. Or conductive to you having a good time in the hobby. Just saying, right? Let's continue. I will rewind it a little bit just so you can get more context.
20 or Skype to do online groups or, find your friends and convert them. We sort of have to carve out a space for ourselves. And I feel...
See what she said there? We have to carve out a space for ourselves. No, you don't. No, you don't. That's what the hobby is here for. No, you don't. Will you find racist motherfuckers? Yeah, you'll find them everywhere in the world. Will you find sexist people? Yeah, everywhere in the world you'll find them. But sequestering yourselves off into your own little intellectual gulag and not coming to play with the rest of us isn't the way to do it.
I feel very fortunate in that I've had a lot of support in this and in our community, both online and here in Los Angeles. It's very inclusive and, very welcoming. And so, I'm fortunate that I haven't had to deal with that. But in the past, it has been tougher. And so you just have to sort of push on your own. And I'm sorry to have to tell you to do more emotional labor that way, honestly. But I can guarantee you that you will find people that will love it, that will be supportive of you.
Yeah, you will. They're called the hobbyists that are already there. The people that she doesn't want to play with because they're a different colour of skin to her, or they're a different sex to her, right? I'm telling you now, nerddom, like Warhammer, D&D is filled with top-rank Chad level people of both sexes, of all types of gender identities, whatever you want to do, right? Of all types of religions, whatever. It's chock full of people who are waiting for someone who looks like Erica to join their table, right? I would not bat an eyelid. If somebody came onto my table, I'd be like, yeah, cool, man. What kind of character are you playing? Cool, let's go. Let's play some D&D. Let's do this. Let's do that, right? The people that she's describing are the normal hobbyists. Okay? And I know she said in the original question that she's being pushed away. Most of the time where I hear stuff like this, it's always self-persecution. It's always self-mental. Well, it's about their self-esteem. No, they can't like me because and it's not because of my attitude, it's because of my skin colour. It's not because of my attitude, it's because of my sex. It's not because of my attitude, it's because of my religion. Maybe you're approaching it with the wrong attitude, because if your response to a little bit of pushback is, all of these people are too white, I think that says more about you than it does the actual hobby. Anyway. What Eric is describing here is already in the hobby, especially in terms of Warhammer and D&D. Right? It just is. I see it nearly every day.
you and that sort of inclusiveness.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think also whenever you're giving like this type of advice, there always is that little asterisk at the end of like, because when someone says like, how do you handle toxic gaming culture? There is always that balance and scales of like, well, if you want to do emotional labor and extra work.
Yeah,
and
it's hard. It's like an unfair thing to ask of somebody. It
Yeah.
is. But that's, it's been a long buildup because like we remember the days where, it was just hard to play, and it's unfortunate now that we were saying before this, it's like for all the gatekeepers out there, like, don't you remember the bad times?
It sets my fucking head on fire. I was the kid. I literally was put in a trash can when I was bullied in school.
Don't you remember
badly.
other kids like slapping
I wonder why.
the books out of your hands?
fucking hands? And to be
Don't be that kid.
to be here in the year fucking 2019 and have people be like, oh, these fake D&D fans. And I'm like,
know.
why are you driving the people away? Do you remember the bad times?
Okay, so in terms of D&D, yeah, there were bad times. What I will say for us as Warhammer fans, this kind of thing doesn't really switch on to us. Because for me, I don't know how it was in your high school, but in my high school, there was an entire few years where everybody played Warhammer. Everybody played Warhammer. Even the cool kids in my school, for 2 or 3 years at least, played. It was this huge craze. They all played Warhammer. And I stayed in it when I was in high school. I stayed in the Warhammer craze. And nobody looked down on me for it, because they all used to do it. So... And I've had countless tales like that about school and getting into Warhammer in school and things like that. So I don't think that really applies to us. I was never... I don't know anybody who's ever been bullied because they do Warhammer. I just haven't. Like, I'm sure it's happened, and I'm sure people have had like weird comments here and there, but I don't know anyone who's been put in a trash can, quote unquote, and shit like that for playing Warhammer. So I don't think that really is a part of us. But in terms of the D&D stuff, maybe. But in terms of gatekeeping, I think what they're doing is the mistake that Brennan and Erica are making here is that they're taking the phenomenon of gatekeeping, and they're essentially just saying, this is what it is. Gatekeeping is keeping out people who want to be in the hobby. That's not what gatekeeping is. That's literally not what gatekeeping is. Right? Gatekeeping is two forms. Gatekeeping can take the form of, the bad form of, this person isn't like us, they shouldn't be in the hobby, or this is our thing, this is our toy, and those other kids aren't allowed to play with it. You're very childish behaviour. It can do that. Very rarely. But you know what the gatekeeping I see far more, as I've just said in this video before, I always see, hey, this is what we like about the hobby. If you don't like this about the hobby, then maybe you should go and find something else to do. There's nothing wrong with thinking that. There's nothing wrong with pushing for that. And this is the kind of attitude that Brennan and Erica are doing, which is what a lot of people on the left and on the far right, but these guys are rather far left, right? So what they like to do is they like to take a complicated issue that has two sides and say it only has one side, and that side is against us, so fuck them. That's generally what they like to do, right? This complicated issue only has one thing, right? And it's against the left. So how dare they, right? That's not true. That's not true. And the right used to do it all the time, by the way, in the early 90s. They used to do it all the time. So, and this thing swings and roundabouts. In about 20 years, it'll be the right that are doing the same thing. This is what the right and left arguments are. They're full of retards, and it just is what it is. And it'll never go away, because that's just how human nature is. Because we're all retarded in our own little way. So, gatekeeping is a complicated thing, and to me, I've simplified it by saying it has two sides, but really it's a lot more complicated than that. But I tried to do like a balanced opinion. It has two sides. There is one toxic side, yes, which is far smaller as far as I'm concerned, and you have the other 95% of gatekeeping, which is the good stuff of, hey, do you know what happens when you don't gatekeep? Rings of power. That's what happens when you don't gatekeep. Yeah, we know how that's turning out. And thank God Amazon are not doing Conan the Barbarian. That's all I'm saying. Gatekeep the shit out of Amazon doing Conan the Barbarian. They can piss off. Anyway.
I know.
This is good.
I would have killed for this.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
No kidding.
Killed for it.
But it is.
That's a good point that she makes there. I get what she's saying there. In that, yeah, the hobby being this big and what it is now, and you being able to go out and watch D&D campaigns online. Yeah, she's completely right in that. Having the accessibility to it. I would have killed for this back in the day too.
It is really hard to think about that. And by the way, this is not limited to gaming culture. Toxic cultures that reinforce patriarchy and heteronormativity and everything are like all over in every niche and industry and hobby all over the world.
Is your blood boiling yet? Is your blood boiling? Mine's starting to simmer. Should I go in now, or should I? No, I'll wait.
And the answer largely remains the same of if you have the bandwidth and you have the space in your life to challenge that system, there are going to be people that are grateful to you.
Yeah, I have to say it has been...
Have you noticed that the guys who purport this bullshit, right? The guys that purport this bullshit of inclusivity, like forced inclusivity and diversity and things like that, the guys who buy into this bollocks are always the guys who've already made it. Have you noticed that? You never really get the guys at the bottom who are trying to make a go of it and trying to get into the industry or anything like that, championing diverse causes. Do you know why? Because they're the ones on the receiving end of the bullshit you're talking about. They're the ones who are on the receiving end of, oh, I'm sorry, you can't teach here. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't write for us. Why? Because you're a straight white male. We don't want more voices like that in our hobby. We need more diverse. Yeah, and people like Brennan Lee Mulligan, they're done. They've made it, right? He's DMing as a job online. That's his job, right? He's made it already. He's there. There was a comedian called Frankie Boyle who I detest. And by the way, he was never funny, ever. All he did was say offensive shit. Which I didn't mind, because if you find that funny, that's fine. But all he did was say offensive shit, and then when he got really, really, really famous, and he made his money, he pulled the ladder up after him, and started wagging his finger at other comedians, saying, how dare you say offensive stuff? That's exactly what Brennan Lee Mulligan is doing here, right? He's become a DM. He's a straight white guy. As far as I know, he's straight. I don't know. But let's just say, take it on. He's a straight white guy. He's made a success of himself through his own talent. And now he's pulling that ladder up after him. You're not allowed in. Because now he gets to say, no, I'm the inclusive one. I hate the patriarchy. I do this. I do that. I say all the right things because he's in the club. Right? He's not trying to get in. He's there. He's pulling that ladder up after him. I hate how we do this to ourselves. How we have these snivelling little traitors who are around, who just are purporting this nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And getting away with it. They're just getting away with it. They're allowed to just say this stuff and say, hey, the patriarchy's bad. The white people are terrible. What? What are you talking about? It doesn't... I will always campaign for the person with the most talent getting a job. I don't give a shit what the colour of your skin is. I don't give a shit what your creed is or whatever, whoever you are. You could be an amoeba. I don't care. If you're the best person for this job, I'm giving you the job. I do not give a shit. I'm giving you the job, right? And if one section of society hasn't had enough opportunities to get to a certain point, I will make sure they get the opportunities to go and learn what they want to learn, just like everybody else. To go to university, to do this, do that, whatever. But what I won't do is just give them the job out of guilt. Right? I won't do that. It literally happened to me this year with teaching, right? Or last year. Applied for 2 jobs in the US, right? Was overqualified for those teaching jobs. I didn't get either teaching job because I was white, right? And I was told this. I was working at a school in the US. I was told this by my supervisor because he really wanted me to get the job. And his faith, and he's a big old Democrat, big old lefty. His faith was completely shook in his own system. He was like, yeah, you literally haven't got the job because you're white. There's too many white people on the faculty. I've experienced this, right? So I feel like I'm talking from a sense of experience. People like Brennan Lee Mulligan pulling that ladder up after them. I know it's... a lot of the time I like to give people the benefit of the doubt and say it's coming from a good place. I honestly doubt it is. I honestly doubt it is with people like that. You know, if it's coming from a place of empathy, all power to you, but it is misguided, it is misjudged, and it is harmful. It is very, very, very harmful. So, you know, why is it that people who are either on the centre or the or the slightly right are the ones campaigning for like color blindness and just being like, I don't care what color. Why is it those people? Why is it the people on the far left and far right who are campaigning for, you know, oh, we should all be different. We literally just heard Erica say it. Take your own people and go make your own things somewhere else. Why? Why? We have a big inclusive hobby. Come in here with us. No problem. We don't see that shit. Just come in, but don't try and change it. If you're a black, transgender, gay person and you love the Black Templars because they're really edgy, they hate aliens, they hate heretics, and they're mental knights wearing power armor, come into the fucking hobby, dude, and go and play Black Templars. No one's gonna say shit. No one will say shit to you. And if they do, the other 98% of the hobby will turn around and gatekeep the shit out of them for even being there in the first place. Because we have an amazing hobby with amazing people. If you like Warhammer for what it is, I don't give a fuck what colour of skin you have. I don't care who you like to stick your dick inside or who you don't like to stick your dick inside. I don't care. As long as it's not kids, I don't care. Right? That's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, let's move on, because we're never going to get through it otherwise.
One of the wildest and most wonderful experiences of my life to see it be this safe haven for marginalized groups.
Yeah.
I sort of talked about how it's sort of the testing grounds and the trial grounds for things you might not be able to explore in your real life. It's been a great place for kids that are, LGBTQ.
Kids can't be LGBTQ because kids don't know what they want until they're 18. Let's just say, right? If you I know that's controversial. I was a dickhead and everyone that I knew was a dickhead before they were 18. Even after 18, I was a dickhead and didn't know what the hell I was. It was only later on when I found out, oh yeah, I'm definitely straight, right? But like, you can't make decisions like that for kids. You can't tell kids that they're this or that or the other. That's immoral and wrong. But I've gone over that on the channel before. I'll leave it alone.
Or genderqueer, to have these characters that live in this world where that's not an issue.
Yeah.
And I can say personally, like, my D&D characters started dating girls before I did.
That's cool. That's cool. I know. That part of it I get. That part of it's fine. That part of it's completely fine. Really good point there. In that D&D is a really good place to go and work out things in your mental repertoire that maybe you're not comfortable with in real life. Completely fine. Absolutely fine. I think that's a really healthy thing. Like, if you're an adult and you think you might be gay, well, why not make a character who's a bit gay and see how you feel playing that kind of a character, right? You know, don't say everything about him's gay, but know in yourself that your character is gay, right? And if there's a romance involved in the setting, maybe do it with somebody in the same sex. No problem with that. Bioware games are really good for that. Like, if you want to explore that kind of yourself and see if you're that kind of a way, brilliant, no problem. I think that's a really good point, and that's a really healthy thing that D&D can do, and it's give you like that safe testing ground for things that maybe you are, maybe you aren't. You know, I like that. I think that's cool. Don't like the fact she's talking about kids. That's weird. But apart from that, I honestly think that's quite a healthy thing to do. Anyway, carrying on.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good place to explore and to be accepted, and you can find those other people. Like our community, like my Twitter community, bless them, is just the kindest, most positive, sweet people, and a lot of them are, from marginalized groups or are kids that didn't feel accepted growing up, and now they found this place. So online, you will find your people. I promise you.
You will.
Not always for the better. I think we know that one. Not always for the better.
Find them, and that's so beautiful. And like, even when I was a kid, I was a weird little homeschooler growing up in a little.
I'm shocked, Brennan. Really, I'm shocked.
I was a little homeschooler in the woods, and I grew up part of the time in New York City and part of the time in the little woods upstate. And we had our little hippie homeschooler group with, like, even as a little 11-year-old boy, we had gender parity in my home group. And
this is the thing. He's bringing up all of these. Have you noticed how Erica isn't really doing that? It's not Erica who's bringing up the words patriarchy. It's not it's not Erica who's bringing up the words like gender parity. It's the fucking white knight over there. That's the person who's talking about all this bullshit. She's just saying, oh, she's actually said some really salient points, some of which are a bit weird, but like 1 or 2 times she's come up with like quite salient points that I picked up on. Whereas all of the nonsense and all of the virtue signaling is coming from the straight white guy in the room. This is why I find white knighting to be absolutely toxic, is stuff like this. Because I'm sure Brennan is a really nice guy. From what I've seen of him, he does seem like a very nice guy. I've watched several of his campaigns just to get into his head before I did this video, just to, have a little look around this week and see what he was like. Seems like a completely nice guy. But this is the warped mindset of people like that, though. Is that he's the one... Gender parity? Why do you need gender parity at a D&D game? Just see who the fuck turns up. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have a checklist. You don't need to have, well, we need 3 or 4 women here, or it's not really a party, It's not. The only time you'd be saying things like that is if you're at a singles night, right? And D&D isn't a singles night, dude. Just chill out. Chill the fuck out. And just advertise a D&D game, and whoever turns up and run a really good game, and get more people involved that way. When I was in university, we ended up, quite naturally, with an almost 50... Well, it was like a 60-40 split of men and women in our D&D group. I started off with 3 guys. 3... And only one of them watches this, and he won't disagree with me. 3 incels. They were literally incels. Not nasty incels. They're just people who couldn't get laid. Shock horror. They were white, straight men who couldn't get laid. And I knew them. They were pretty nice guys. And I've always wanted to run D&D before, because I did it years ago, but I'd never done it since. And I'd written this fantasy world, and I gave it to them and said, hey, you guys keep talking about D&D, would you like to do D&D with me? Here's the world. And they went off and read it, and it meant so much to me that these people actually read that setting. It wasn't small, it was quite a large setting. And they came back, they were gushing about it, they were like, I want to play a character from here and there, and I just threw myself into it. I created this campaign, they were having such a good time, and laughing in my dorm room, things like that. And eventually, we had another guy come and join us, and then we had a girl come and join us, and another girl, and another guy, and another girl, right? And so we had like a 60-40 split. It will naturally happen because everybody wants to have a fucking good time. It doesn't matter what sex you are, or whatever is between your legs, whatever colour your epidermis is, it doesn't matter. Everybody wants to have a good time. You don't need fucking gender parity. You don't need to smash the patriarchy. You don't need to do all of these stupid things he's talking about, because the only reason why he's talking about it is to make sure that everybody knows I'm one of you. Please like me. Please touch my penis. Right? That's exactly that kind of energy. And I'm sure he's a really nice guy. But this is the one interview where I just looked at it and thought, dude, shut up. Like, literally. A lot of really damaging stuff is said in this interview, and I'm just going to get on with it because we're getting on in time.
But I remember a couple years ago watching this explosion online of the embrace of 5th edition by the LGBT community. Yeah. And there was a moment of me being like, whoa, well, that's not... And then immediately...
He didn't put Q at the end of LGBT. He should be cancelled. Just saying.
I was like, why are you surprised? A game of heroic fantasy where our differences all come together to make us...
Huge props to Wizards of the Coast for leaning into that.
Yeah.
Of saying specifically, like your character might not identify as male or female, and like, using pronouns that are mixed, or just like completely, there's like a trans Magic the Gathering planeswalker. It's just, for them to understand that this is a safe place for everybody is really huge, and I thank them for helping to foster that.
Kissing up to the guys who make D&D, what a surprise. So I'm on both sides of this issue, because you're allowed to do that. You don't have to be one thing or the other. You can have certain parts of your brain that are over here and certain parts of your brain that are over there. I actually think it's like a sure sign of intelligence when somebody can think in duality. Somebody can see both sides of an issue. So what you're saying there isn't wrong. Like Wizards of the Coast have gone out and been very like pro equality, pro this, pro that. And whilst that's okay, I honestly think that's fine. I don't see anything wrong with saying, hey, you're welcome here. I don't see anything wrong with that. But what I do see wrong is that you have people from Wizards of the Coast, we have people from Roll20 who literally say things like, and this is somebody from Roll20 literally said this, there are too many white men on my platform. If you don't see how damaging that is, you're either a left tard, or you should go and get your head checked. Like, if you don't see how that's damaging. I don't agree with that sentiment. It's just like gatekeeping, there's two sides to it, right? There's a positive side and a negative side. The positive side is saying to people, hey, if you think you might be marginalized here, you're wrong. You won't be. Come on in, right? I agree with that. Great. But if you're then going to say, oh, by the way, all these white guys who were here at the start, yeah, we're going to like put them to the side so you can like play with your own people. Yeah, we're not going to push them anymore. We're not going to have the hobby be what they want anymore. It's going to be what you want. That's completely wrong and damaging, right? And I really hope Games Workshop don't start to slide into that trap. But I can sense it. I can sense it.
That community.
I 100% agree. And thank you for that question, Browncoat B. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're listening to this and you are, I'll say that the other flip side of this advice is if you're listening to this and you are someone who's not marginalized and doesn't, or this is like new information, you have stuff to do as well. Like, make sure that your home game is like inclusive and that you are not either certainly not intentionally, but also not unintentionally making your table unwelcoming, and make sure that if there are people in your local gaming store or at your local game night, that they are being invited, included.
Yeah.
That's fine. I've got nothing wrong with what he said there. I do have a problem with the subtext, right? Again, as I've said throughout this entire video, I have no problem with what he said. I have a serious issue with the subtext. What he's saying is make sure your game is inclusive and open to everybody. Yeah, every D&D game should be like that. Every Warhammer game should be like that, right? If it's not, then make it that. Because there's no reason for it not to be. Unless somebody's coming in and is trying to like destroy your hobby and not like it, but you've got to give people a chance first. So he's true. That's what he's saying is all true, all brilliant. But there is subtext there, isn't there? Make it open, make it this, make it that. What he's really saying is if there are people that don't look like you at your local hobby store, that you should give them preferential treatment in getting into your game. No. I'm going to compare that to being disabled, and I know people are going to be like really annoyed at me for doing this, but I have a friend who's disabled, and he says to me, whenever somebody makes a concession for him because he's disabled, he dies a little inside. He hates it. He absolutely hates it. Somebody actually, I always bring up this thing where we all went abseiling in Nottingham. This is like 8 or 9 years ago now, and one of the guys who was doing the abseiling was trying to get him to do abseiling when he's in a wheelchair, and he ended up having to say to him, "Dude, I'm in a fucking wheelchair." And he said, "Yeah, I can do it." And he goes, No. It'll take you ages to set it up. I'll be in the way of all of these people behind me, right? I don't have any legs. There are certain things I can't fucking do, like run a marathon. I just can't do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go abseiling. Leave me the fuck alone, right? Now, I can only imagine that's what it feels like if you walk into a hobby store or a game store or whatever, and you're LGBTQ or you're black or whatever, and there are people coming up to you going, "Hey, come on, sit at my table. We're trying to be inclusive. We're trying to be this. We're trying to be that." How shitty must that feel to you? You're like, okay, but like, I don't want to play D&D right now. Okay, but I'd rather we just became friends normally, and then I just joined the table normally. You know, I don't need to be a charity case. That's the problem. That's the problem with the subtext. Leave them alone. Let them come into the hobby and do whatever the fuck they want. And if they want to join a table, then fine. If they don't, then fine. It's not on anybody to be inclusive. It's on everybody to just not be arseholes. And if you really need somebody like Brennan Lee Mulligan, for fuck's sake, to tell you not to be an arsehole, you need therapy.
Yeah, it's true. And again, you know, that's what I say is like, it's a lot of emotional labor for somebody who already has to struggle with that on the daily basis. But like, if you don't have to, like, you can just lend an extra hand.
Well, we do have to, because we have people like you talking down to us constantly every single time. We have all of our things we actually like in the world being destroyed by people like you, who seem to be like, you know, the rings of power are a good thing. But anyway, that's enough of that. I honestly have nothing else to say. At nearly 40 minutes, the interview was over. I've said what I needed to say. What do you guys think of gatekeeping in our hobby, and in terms of D&D, in terms of 40k. I know certain people who are online have given me some really interesting things to talk about. I haven't used them here because, and in all honesty, I've run over time. I was going to show you some photographs that have been sent, but that really inspired me to get on and start talking about gatekeeping. It does happen. The bad part of it does happen, but I don't think gatekeeping and toxic behaviour are the same thing. I honestly don't. I think the people who are taking the piss out of marginalised groups like women in the hobby are not gatekeepers. They're incel tryhards. They are edgy edgelords who think that they can say a thing, and these guys are guys who can't get laid, and so they're taking out their anger on people who don't want to fuck them. And it's wrong, but it is in every facet of society, not just our own, not just our little Warhammer community corner over here. So, what do you guys think of gatekeeping? Do you think there are there's a positive and negative side to it? Do you think it's all positive? What do you think? Let me know in the description in the comments down below. This interview will be down in the description. Thank you very much for providing it. What is your name? BuildOwl00. Go and give him a sub, by the way. I don't know what his content is like, but you know, he's only got 600 odd subscribers, so go send him some love. And again, sorry this is a very ranty video, very long video, but you know, some people might have found it interesting. So love you all long time. You got a bonus video this weekend. I might do a stream tomorrow, depending on how hungover I am. Have a good one. See you later. Have a good one. Bye.